Thank you, Sam, and thank you. It's always great to be back at the Adam Smith Institute. I've always been honoured to be a senior fellow in recent years. What the Institute does is fantastic, and for those of you who love blogs and you love politics and you love economics, wherever you come from philosophically or intellectually, do read their blog regularly because it's controversial, it's fun, and above everything at your age, you should be reading as much as you can. If you're doing A-levels and then you're going to be undergraduates, read as much as you can, because the intellectual baggage that you pick up at this age has to sustain you for the intellectual journey of your lives. And very few people make major intellectual journeys in the course of their adult lives. So what you learn now, it is very important. And study it all. Look at the anarcho-socialists and the communists and read Marxism and classical liberalism and libertarianism. Read it all, embrace it all. I did at my age, and look at me, look where I got. But no, have fun. So thanks to the Institute for inviting me. I've been tasked to talk about the morality of free markets. Well, for me, markets essentially rest on three things, three principles: life, liberty, and property. I think we can all agree that as individuals, we'll have the right to our lives. But we also have the right to our freedom, to our liberty, not to be forced or coerced by other people, not to be violated by other people. And also property. And when free marketeers use the word property, that sounds often incredibly right-wing. It means, the word property, well, that surely is a large house in Belgravia or someone who's got a big lawn with a helicopter landing on it. What I mean by property is two things. I mean the right to own the fruits of your own effort and labour, things that are justly acquired. So you, your parents, family, friends, you work. Sometimes you earn money. It might be pocket money, but you might have a Saturday job or a bigger job than that. You have the right to the fruits of your labour, and you have the right, I believe, to choose how you wish to spend that money. Do you want to buy a TV, an iPhone? You know, what do you want to do? Do you want to invest in? But there's another type of property I think that's important, and that's property in the person. You have property of the person. I own this car, I own this TV, I own this house, I invest in these shares, whatever. That's property of the person. But you also have the right to self-ownership, property in the person. And that's about you choosing how you want to dress, how do you want your hair to be, do you want to wear jewellery. And it's the right to your own sexuality. It's things like that. So life, liberty and property are for me some of the underpinning principles of the morality of markets. Building on that, when I talk about a free market, I don't mean some pinstripe suited individual from the City of London, you know, and I don't mean a car trader. Oh, I'm in the market, I've got a deal for you, love. I don't mean that. To me, a market properly conceived is a diverse range of ownership philosophies. So, charities, properly conceived, operate in the market. So do cooperatives. So do not-for-profit. So do mutual funds or mutual organisations, as well as for-profit companies. And what's interesting when you start to think about the organisations that exist in a market, you start to, if you dig deep enough, you start to ask, what is the market? What are these organisations? Well, for me, there are two very, very, very important differences. There are the principles of the voluntary exchange of goods and services. When we come to lunch, if you go out to lunch or you want to choose to watch a movie or whatever, there should be no gun to your head about where you go. You know, come to my cinema, come in. Or you must go to Pret. There is no gun to your head. You've got a world of choice. You can say, I think that's too expensive, I'm going to go here. Or I want to spend 6 months' money and dine at the Ritz. But politics is different. The state is different. The state rests on coercion. The state does put a gun to your head. In a sense, I think it was Mao was great. All politics does come from the barrel of a gun. It comes when the taxman says, hand over 10% or 20% or 40% of your earnings. And taxation and coercion do what I say. I'm a monarch, I'm a ruler, I'm the king, the queen, the prime minister, the president. That does rest on coercion. Markets don't operate on coercion. Markets operate on an element of voluntary choice. It's you deciding what to do on a voluntary basis. Further than that, when you actually dig into markets, there are often conundrums. What is the market fundamentally? You might say it's money, it's earning money. Well, that's interesting because the money in your pocket is itself a state monopoly. That money you've invariably got in your bank account or in your wallet in your pocket, that's the pound. It comes from the Royal Mint and the Bank of England. The head of state has her photograph on it. There is no market in this sense in money. Richard Branson is not free to say, I'm going to launch the Richard Branson dollar and have it traded in the United Kingdom. Similarly, if you have a company, let's say, sir, you own a restaurant and I supply fish to your restaurant and you owe me some money and then you go bankrupt. You might have a limited company, a limited liability company, and if you have that state protection, then yes, your company can't afford to pay me, the company goes bankrupt. But you might not, I might not be able to take the shirt off your back, or take your car, or take your home. You are protected. So even when you think about a so-called free market society, and that appears to be free market, I want you to think in the future, I want you to dig a bit deeper. Is money really about capitalism? Is it not, in most states of the world, issued by a monopoly supplier, government? The British pound has lost over 98% of its value through inflation since the early 1950s. That's quite an incredible hidden tax on savers. Quite an incredible tax. Who would invest if there was a real free market in money? Who would invest in something that would lose that rate of value? Personally, I'd have more faith if Richard Branson was launching a currency. And I want to say something strange to you. As a free marketeer, I love regulation. But I don't like state regulation. If you look at the chairs in front of you, or the chairs you're sitting on, you'll notice that the chairs have rounded corners. There is no regulation room that says you must have a chair with rounded corners. Yet those corners are rounded for a very good reason. They're rounded because I have a 6-year-old daughter, and children of 6 and younger, when they run around rooms like this, they can fall over, and if there are sharp corners, they can gouge their eyes out, they can break bones. Noses can be broken. But if they're soft, curved corners, then they set a better standard for children. That's why I love regulation, but I don't like state regulation. I like regulation born from the market, high standards that are born not from the edict of prime ministers, presidents, monarchs, or greedy, vote-motivated politicians top down. I love free market regulation, free market standards, because they're bottom up and they're driven by real people, like you, like my daughter. For me, as a free marketeer, as a libertarian, someone who believes in a diverse and open market, someone who doesn't like collective categories of race, gender, class, someone who likes to look at people as individuals, I will tell you, and the devil's in the detail of being a sociologist, ultimately my morality for the market rests on its benefits for the poorest in society. I'm not a free marketeer, and I'm not a senior fellow at the Adam Smith Institute, and I don't lead the Cobden Centre because I am particularly concerned about the pinstripe suits. I'm interested in markets because of the way that they can create wealth and they can lift people out of poverty and they can make lives better. And let me give you an example. For 10 years, if you read my bio, for 10 years, I was the Public Affairs Director for the UK's independent health and social care sector, i.e. all the provision, all the hospitals, nursing homes that were not in the state sector, the NHS. I'm someone who questions the morality of the NHS. I think all too often state healthcare is directed by bureaucrats who look up to politicians, and politicians love to propagandise at the dispatch box in the House of Commons because they are greedy and vote motivated, as I said earlier. But if you dig below the propaganda of the NHS and you look away from the vote motivations of its masters and you look at some home truths, you find a rather different picture, and a picture that often politicians of all parties don't want you to fully recognise. Let me just whet your appetite. If you're terminally ill in Britain and you have 3 weeks to live, the likelihood is you will go into a hospice. More than 95% of hospices in this country are charities. If you're ill this afternoon, maybe you're mentally ill, and you're into this evening, it's cold and it's wet, and you're in the doorway of Holborn Tube Station, or you're sitting at Rough in St James's Park, will the NHS be running along to look after you? No. It'll be a charity. It'll be someone like Centrepoint, or it'll be the Salvation Army. It'll be volunteers with soup kitchens. If one of you, in half an hour, leave this building, and you're knocked over, and you spend the next 20 years in a coma, where are you likely to be? Where will you be physically cared for in the southeast of England for the next 20 years? Probably at the Royal Hospital for Neurodisability in Putney, a major charity. If you have epilepsy, you'll be looked after in the charitable sector. If you had a child that was born today multi-profoundly disabled, maybe a baby born with no arms, no legs, maybe half a brain, maybe a lifespan of no more than 6 months, they will be looked after at the Children's Trust. It used to be called Tadworth Court, a charity. And I can go on, and I can go on, and I can go on. If you have cancer and you have a year to live, or you're in pain, who will come to actually nurse you in your home? The private, the independent charitable nursing sector. If you found granny or granddad and someone had a tremor this afternoon, suspected Parkinson's disease, it'll probably be the Parkinson's Disease Society who's your front line. You live in a country where vast numbers of people, kids go to posh private schools, but there's a vast amount of private tuition. It's estimated more than 150,000 kids in this country now are home educated. You live in a country where people pay just under 50% of national wealth goes to government, yet for every one state policeman and woman, there are 2 or 3 people in the private security sector. So, to conclude, because my time is up, I believe in the morality of markets. I believe in market-born regulation. I believe in the diversity of cooperatives, mutuals, charities. I believe in life, liberty and property. I am wary of the propaganda of political masters and people who have that lifeblood, that oxygen of politics, coercive taxation. I'm suspicious of elite power, and I'm primarily concerned at drilling down to home truths and stripping away the propaganda of the state. Thank you very much indeed.